All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Knuckle Sandwich MMA. We have got another fight. That's right. We are going to see Fight Night on Fight Island that is scheduled for July 15th, which is tomorrow. And we have got a truly international card. So many great fights. Now, for people that there's a number of fights of fighters I've never even seen before myself. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a great card. You know, when you have a lot of the international fighters coming out, and that's the reason why they went to Fight Island in the first place, is because they couldn't fly all of these folks in from various parts of the world to Vegas, to the Apex. So they had to basically find an international space where all of these fighters could fly into, and that was Fight Island. And that's why Dana White and the UFC put in all of this work to get this Fight Island up and running so that they could have international fights, all regardless of what's going on with the pandemic and everything like that. The protocols that they have put into place for this, for all the fights on Fight Island, are immense. They're very, how should I put it? Very intense. There's a lot of testing that they have to do in order to even get on the plane to fly to Abu Dhabi. And so they're going through all these rigorous protocols to make sure that they're all healthy and ready to fight. So with this card, which is tomorrow, and it begins, I believe, at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We have got, I'm going to go over the main card. Now, again, there's a lot of fighters that I've never even heard of. Does not mean that they are not beasts, that they're not animals, that they're not killers, that they're not skilled, because if they're fighting in the UFC, they're going to be very skilled. So I'm looking at a lot of sleeper hits, and I've said that terminology before. They usually use that for movies and stuff like that, but for me, a sleeper hit could be somebody that you've never heard of, something you didn't expect, and all you get is fireworks and knockouts and submissions and all kinds of fun stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, we did have two fighters that missed weight, and the first fighter that missed weight was a guy named Chris Fishgold, and he weighed in at 149 pounds. So that's basically 3 pounds over the weight limit. And we also had a dude named Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and he came in at 174 pounds, another 3 pounds overweight. So those two fighters, they're still going to fight, but they have to forfeit 20% of their purse to their opponent. Whether they win or lose does not matter. They're still forfeiting 20% of their purse to their opponent. That's the penalty that you get for not making weight. So let's go over the main card right now, and I'm going to start again from the bottom up to the main fight. And the first one we have is Abdul. Oh, there he! I just said his name. Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Monier Lazez. And again, Abdul missed weight, so they're still fighting, but that should be a good fight at welterweight, and should be a fantastic fight. I'm looking forward to that. He wants to win now. Now that he's overweight, he wants to win because that's going to look really good for him. Now, the other reason why I say that all of these fights are going to be excellent is because these fighters understand that basically the eyes of the world are on these fights, because there's not many other sports events going on, and so they have a lot of eyeballs on them, and this is their time to shine. And it kind of bothers me a little bit that people miss weight when it's this important, especially if they're new in the UFC and in their career. I don't know how many of these guys are making their UFC's debuts or not, but things happen though. If you have a bad weight cut, if you're ill, I mean, not the COVID, but if you're ill from something else, that sometimes the weight cut just doesn't go the way you want it to, and it's really hard to get those extra pounds off. And you just have to let the chips fall where they may. So kudos on Monier Lazez for accepting the fight and moving forward with it. Should be a great one. And then the next one up we have for the women's flyweight bout. This is going to be Molly McCann versus Talia Santos. Taylor Santos, excuse me. And this is truly an international card. There's people from all over the place here that are fighting, and it's going to be super spectacular. So Molly McCann versus Talia Santos. I don't know these fighters. I've seen Molly McCann fight once, and she's a pretty good fighter. I have not seen Taylor Santos. She's a Brazilian, and I haven't seen her fight before, so that should be very interesting. The next up on the list is Jimmy Rivera versus Cody Stamann. And Cody is doing a quick turnaround. He just fought not too long ago, and he's doing a quick turnaround because he just wants to get, you know, like I said, the world is looking at these fights now. So many more fans, both casuals and diehards, in the MMA world, and mixed martial arts, karate, all these different, and these competitive types of fans that are going to be watching this fight. And this is a free fight. It is fight night, so it's on ESPN Plus, and it's going to be a great card. So Jimmy Rivera, he's had a couple of losses in a row, and he really, I think, in my opinion, he has to win this fight. He started off super strong, and then kind of hit a skid and hasn't been able to rebound yet. And Cody Stamann coming off of a win, he wants to keep that streak going, but that's going to be a really interesting fight there. So Jimmy Rivera, in my opinion, has to win this fight. Next up, and that's at featherweight, by the way, it's a featherweight bout. And then next up we have Tim Elliott. Great wrestler, very, very cagey wrestler, very aggressive fighter. He likes to grapple. He's a great grappler, good at submissions and good at scrambling. If you try to take him down and hold him down, he's really good about getting out of almost anything. He's very cagey. I like Tim Elliott, and he's going to be, and that's at flyweight, and he's going to be facing Ryan Benoit or Benoit. I don't know how the correct terminology of his last name. I would say Benoit, but on the weigh-ins they called him Benoit. So we're going to go with Ryan Benoit. And I've seen him fight as well. So this is going to be a very, very tough match. I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a stand-up match. I think it's going to be on the ground, but it's going to be super exciting because these guys are both going to be, they're escape artists. And you can't keep an escape artist down. They're going to get up and they're going to, and they don't, like Elliott doesn't normally just pop to his feet if he can get away. He's going to tie you up. He's going to pretzel you. He's going to get you into some very precarious situations. So it should be super, super interesting fight. And Tim Elliott, he's coming off of a loss too, I believe. Benoit or Benoit, he's also, I believe, coming off of a loss. So this is kind, I don't want to say it's a must win, but I think Elliott maybe has lost a couple in a row. And normally with the UFC, if you're losing 3 in a row, it's kind of dicey for you whether you're going to stay on the roster or not. That's not always the case. It just depends on how exciting of a fighter you are. If you're boring, if you're not in shape, and and the bosses see that it's, if you bring it, there's a good chance that you stay on board and live to fight another day. But if you don't and you're losing 3, they usually will cut you and say, go get some more experience, get some wins, and then we'll look at you and maybe bring you back. So the UFC does that a lot. If you're on a loose start, but by the same token, I have seen fighters leave that have been cut and come back and start to win. So that's not the end. Just because you get cut, they're going to give you a chance. They're going to watch you outside of the UFC and see how your fights go and see how aggressive, how much you've improved and all that kind of stuff, because they do want to bring good fighters back. They don't want to just say, okay, you're done, get out of here, we don't want to see you again. All right. And then now we're going to go to the main fight of the evening. This one is going to be a spectacular fight, in my opinion. It's not going to be boring. It is going to be a firefight, probably to end all firefights. And I'm not over exaggerating. Now, if you're familiar with Calvin Kattar, he has been on a tear. He has been beating some really strong fighters. So he's really good. He hits hard. He hits really, really hard. And I think his last fight was a KO, or maybe last 2 or 3 fights. He was either a TKO or a KO. And he's kind of a big dude. He's taller and got a real good physical structure, and he's got really good punches. Kicks, everything else. He moves very, very well. He's great at lateral movement. Okay, and he's great at keeping his head off the center line. That's super important when you're fighting. And he's very creative as well. So he's not the kind of guy that will just settle for butting you up against the cage and holding you there. He's not that dude. He's going to be throwing punches because he wants to knock you out. Now, his opponent. Oh, by the way, this is a featherweight bout. So his opponent is Dan Ige, and he just came off a controversial win, but he won nonetheless. And he's a fighter too. This dude is mean. And I was watching the embedded series with these guys, and Ige, he wants to hurt people. He looks like a nice guy, but he wants to hurt people, and he's very aggressive too. So when you have 2 aggressive guys coming forward, and neither one of them really like to go backwards. They don't like to throw off the back foot. They like to engage, and they like to come forward. I suspect that this fight is going to be a phone booth fight. If you're not familiar with that term, basically it's these 2 guys that get into an area about the size of a phone booth, and they just start throwing punches. I don't think that they're going to just wail on each other. I think they're going to be very calculated. Both of them are super technical fighters. Very exciting fighters, and Dan Ige is coming on a quick turnaround as well. Well, both of them are. Calvin Kattar and Dan Ige are both coming. In fact, I think their last fight, they both fought on the same card. So I'm not sure, but I'm pretty, if I recall correctly, that is right, that those 2, they didn't fight each other, but they fought on the same card. So, and then they both just turned around and said, hey, put us back in. I didn't sustain any damage from the last fight. I'm ready. I'm trained. I'm ready to rock and roll. Put me back in. I'm ready to go. I want to go to Fight Island. So everybody wants to fight at Fight Island, and because they know they're going to get the special treatment. They're going to be safe because they're in a 10-mile perimeter. There's a 10-mile perimeter. They call it the bubble. Everybody that's there, like they have people that are running restaurants, hotels, and everything like that, but there's no public per se. So you have the employees at Fight Island, at Yas on Abu Dhabi, and they are all have been tested. So everybody there, they know is good, and not worrying about catching any kind of infections from the COVID or anything like that. So they do have to, once they land on Yas Island, they have to quarantine, and I think they're in their rooms for like 3 or 4 days to quarantine, just to quadruple check to make sure that they didn't bring anything with them, because I guess there's no COVID, or it's very low in Abu Dhabi, and they don't want any foreigners bringing that stuff in. So they're really, really meticulous on how they're checking everybody. And so far it's been great. I know they've had some coaches that haven't been able to come to the fight because whether it was flying out of Vegas or somewhere in the United States, they tested positive for COVID-19. They were not allowed to even get on the plane. So everything from that point of the landing should be good. And to this date, they haven't had anybody come down with it after they've landed. Okay, so that's really encouraging. And UFC, I'm going to give my hats off to them. They're doing a great job in all the testings and the protocols and the rigorous protocols that they're doing. They're getting swabs stuck up their nose, clear into their sinus cavity. And if you've ever had that done, it is not pleasant, because it feels like they're scratching your brain with the cotton swab that's about that long. So to put yourself through all that, not to mention you have to make weight, not to mention it's 13 degrees out there during the day. So many things, but you have all of these eyeballs. You have the world looking at you. If this is your UFC debut, go out there and fight your butts off, man. and you know, and make yourself look really good and pump up the fight and look good doing it. Win or lose, you'll your stock will go up. You'll score some brownie points. If you show up and you miss weight and you have a bad fight, you know, that sticks out too. That sticks out in the UFC's mind. And oh man, you know, you don't want to be embarrassed, or you don't want to be embarrassing to the UFC. So you want to go out there and have a good one. So I think it's going to be a great tussle, and it's going to be live from Abu Dhabi tomorrow night, July 15th, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on ESPN Plus. I think it's ESPN and ESPN Plus, but I could be wrong on that. I'll try and get that down better as I get better at this, but it should be a great fight. Remember, just because you don't know a lot of the fighters on this card does not mean it's not going to be exciting. And for casual people, that if you don't know the names, casual fans, I should say, don't worry about it, because what you care about is action, okay? What you want is action. I think this card is going to be chock full of action. All right, you guys, thanks for joining us at Knuckle Sandwich, and we're going to keep going. We're trying to get better and better every time we broadcast, and hopefully tomorrow night's going to be, as my friend from WWE, what's his name, Jim something or other, he's one of the commentators, he said this is going to be a real slobber knocker. That's what I'm thinking too. I think it's going to be a slobber knocker. So all right, you guys, have a wonderful day, and look for the post fight analysis from a fan after tomorrow night's fight. All right, have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow at Fight Island.